Okay, hello everyone. My name is Gloria, and welcome to Dystopian Futures, the penultimate episode of this series. We have a really special guest today, and basically, we've tried to do this 3 times already. Something is happening with the internet, so hopefully this time works. And I'm really sorry for everybody. It's been very jilty at the moment, so I'm not too sure what is happening. But we are talking about the future of art, and we have Keiken, and we have face filters. So maybe it's the face filters, but I don't think it is. I think it's our phones just not liking it. Hey, everyone, how are you doing?
Hey.
I see you. I see you waving and saying hey.
Hey, final rich. Yes. Bogey.
Third time. Yes. So let's try this. So sorry about this.
Yeah, send us virtual love to make the internet,
send us
the Wi-Fi stronger.
Try and be able to get through it. Yes.
Yeah. Hi A to Z. Mirrored. Send us virtual love, please, and make the internet stronger. The internet needs to be stronger because they're being such dicks at the moment. On so many levels.
Yeah, what are they trying to do? Are they trying to actually just silence us on Instagram or something? Maybe that's it. Maybe they're trying to do USA kind of block us. It's not about that life. Sorry, I haven't even got a straight thing about Feel My Metaverse, and I feel so bad to ask you to explain this again. But
it's
I
okay,
want
I'm practicing.
Some people, you know what I mean? It's just practicing. So, Feel My Metaverse is the project that you're most excited about, and obviously you deal a lot with VR, AR, AI, face filters, basically digital art is your complete realm that you operate in with that amazing face filter. And I'm going to join you near the end. But please tell me about Feel My Metaverse, and we'll start there, and then we will move on to talk about the technology that you've used for that.
So Feel My Metaverse is a CGI film, and it's about the Earth being rendered uninhabitable due to the climate crisis. It's kind of set at the time we thought kind of more further ahead in the future, but actually it feels much closer to home. So the Earth was rendered uninhabitable, and then Alipay quickly disseminated life units so that humans could escape into virtual worlds, and but these worlds feel as real as the Earth. And then it explores these different worlds that have been created as we can no longer inhabit the Earth. And then it also explores how different types of people navigate through these different worlds. So it really looks at the wellness of humanity and the wellness of the Earth, but each kind of scene deconstructs our understanding and perception of reality, kind of questioning it. But at the same time, it has quite a deep sense of looking at inequality. And I think in terms of now, one thing that was quite interesting that's very relevant to this current moment is one of the characters one of the characters lived in this very privileged world and couldn't understand how other people felt because of their own privileges. They had also biological upgrades which made their heart maybe as strong as a diamond, but its heartbeat would always beat the same way. So it kind of looks at that, and it also looks at stuff how you can you can occupy different bodies, but you occupy bodies in a really appropriating way. So they have when you go to get dressed, there's a themed day. So that day is Kylie Day. So everybody wears the body of Kylie, and then it makes them feel connected and makes them feel accepted, and it's kind of a bit in some ways it's exactly what's happening now. People need to post about things, sometimes not because of, when they really look deeply about it, they're not really doing it for the right reasons. They're actually doing it for their own self-image, and it's also false connection and false care. So the week before, say, was Dalai Lama Day. It made them feel all wise, but obviously you're not really wise because you've occupied the body of Dalai Lama. So it kind of discusses a lot of I guess like a lot of white privilege. It talks a lot about it discusses then the alternative to that. So looking at worlds that are more emancipatory, where you learn through role play, through sensory understanding, through the earth, through all kinds of things.
Yeah, no, it's so funny because you've basically touched on all of kind of the different inequalities that have been happening since we know, and you've touched on a really key thing, especially now when you're talking about people probably getting involved that just makes their image look good online instead of more actually caring about kind of the facts, what they're trying to post about. It's a really interesting bit, and I really love this bit. It looks like Adam and Eve, basically, like you're in the garden.
Yeah, it's kind of like
it's
playing on that.
It's super beautiful. What I do think, especially about it, and you've touched on that point as well, because ultimately social media, like if you think about who are the most richest people in the world, they've used the likes of social media and stuff to show this certain persona of yourself. You can use free CGI, creates new kind of Instagram like, what are they called? Instagram influencers and stuff like that. And you've basically taken all of that information and put it into this, which I do really, really enjoy. Oh, you see her nipples came up.
Oh, yeah.
This is what we do when Eve's lips come up, just so we don't get blocked. And, oh my God, that's probably what happened. We got blocked. No, joking.
Oh, yeah.
That's probably what happened. No, I really love the piece. Oh, and thank you so much for sharing it in full. There was one thing that I was going to say. Have you read A Brave New World?
No, but I know what it is.
Because you touched on these pieces with this, and I was talking about this book the other day, and I thought it was just so interesting how something written like 75 years ago was so prevalent to still right now, and I love how you've used art to show that, basically. So thank you. No, definitely. Thank you. Like, so how did you make this piece then? Because it's 20 long of like drama. It's
it's 35 minutes. Yeah, it's like it was like working really, really fucking hard to make it. But it's good because like now we kind of really understand the production process of making a film. Like it's basically using virtual production, so it's all the kind of like if you were to make a film, you're making it like a film, but instead of like using so you use an actor or a performer. So we had 2 real life performers, but we scanned their face, and then we kind of collaborated with them, and kind of, you know, because we're a collaborative practice in the way that we actually work with collaborators, is very like, it's always about this mutual exchange.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we aim for it to be, about mutual exchange. So it's kind of like the characters are fictional characters, but they're also based on reality at the same time, and these real people. So we scan their faces, we do motion capture as well.
How do you face it? Can you use apps for that now, or
you can use apps for it? We went to Form Capture to have our faces 3D scanned, but you can do them really well, actually. The only problem is that you can't create facial expressions. So like, for example, we'd have to use a camera, and you'd have to like angle the camera as if it's like making an expression, or something like that. You have to use a lot of like tricks. So the problem with this is that it's so expensive and so difficult to rig the face, but then at the same time, the problem is that like how undiverse and biased the characters are, and so it kind of puts you in a weird situation where you don't want to like contribute, you don't want to use them, but then you need to use them if you want to create more expression.
So you're talking about avatars, basically, that you to try and use, and you're completely right. You know, I know a lot of 3D CGI digital designers who it's very hard to kind of deviate from a certain look of an avatar. Ultimately, they're made in quite homogeneous mostly sexist white image. Do you know what I mean? So if I would struggle if I was trying to like get these pom-poms in and then, you know what I mean, get the different colours.
Yeah, and just like the imperfections of the face and stuff like that, and even like the color of the skin. It's like, you know, for example, if a white person is doing the color of your face, they don't understand it the same way. So people often get those kind of things wrong. They kind of get the very essence of that character wrong. I think it's a very weird area to like 3D scan and takes like kind of physically form somebody's own identity and then make it's because it's almost like an object the way that it exists, and then you have to rig it with bones. So I think there's a lot of like politics to it actually that can be kind of explored.
Yeah, I can imagine. I saw this thing actually with will.i.am. I think it was like a year ago. He basically completely, you know, he's got loads of money, so he's there like just 3D mapping his face, like, and avatar of himself. So when his mum rang, something dead weird. When his mum rang, the avatar would pick up, and she'd just see the face of his avatar. And it's like so weird when you're starting to get like art mixed with like this immortality complex, and then real life.
He has an immortality complex, definitely.
Right, he literally was loving it. Like, so if anybody rings, then that just answers, and I was like, that is going to be playing until 2021. No, 2021, not 2021. 2100. It's going to be playing way past when he's gone and he's in a vial. You know what I mean? So, yeah. No, I completely understand. You know, one of your artists, so funny because she actually ended up working with myself on Dystopian Futures as well, with background now. Absolutely fantastic being, Sakima. You feature her a lot in your art. I'd love to know about that relationship and just kind of, like why.
So like I knew Sakima from college, and so it kind of started from that, but from looking at bought characters, we wanted the characters that represented something more natural, more like a role model to society. Like we wanted somebody who could play that but understood the body, because so for example, like you use motion capture. So Sakima Crook is a dance artist. Like she innately understands how her body, she knows all the meaning, she can express anything that I can in language through her body. So it kind of started off with like working with her, talking to her about the characters, and then kind of developing the CGI character with her and kind of talking about that, and then it also physicalized into a performance which we performed physically through AR filters as well at Jerwood Arts, and then we also did it last week as a digital experience. But we definitely have this kind of ongoing collaboration where we learn from her physical movements and the story she tells with her body and the person she is and what she speaks about, and then we kind of influence that and create these different identities through digital form and kind of incorporate them in the metaverse we're creating. So it's just like I feel like it's just like this continuous journey that we keep evolving with one another, and we learn about each other's practice more and more each time.
Yeah, for sure. It's that fluidity of collaboration as well, because working with Sakima, the way that she looks at things is quite different. You know, like she creates her own universe, but she does it through her body, and like you said, it's kind of like that perfect melting pot of this like weird sensuality and also just like quite alien, but at the same time it's just like such a beautiful contemporary thing to watch. So no, she is great. And also just representing all four parts of fluidity basically in the society. I think it's great to shine a light on that.
I think, you know, she really heals people through her body, the way she moves and the way she exists. And that's like such a powerful ability to have. And that's exactly what, like, if I had a child, I want my child to be looking up to someone like her. And I also think there's something really important about like understanding the languages that don't exist just through words. So like a lot of like when if you go on like our metaverse.live/pando, and there's like an interview with Sakima, and the way that she talks about the performance that we did with her, that was like part of the ecosystem of Film My Metaverse. She kind of tells the ideas and concepts are the same ideas and concepts, but she explores it through movement and from a just slightly different perspective. So it's like super interesting because it's like this parallel world where we're also like, through learning about the way she speaks about it, it informs us again and kind of makes us kind of reevaluate and change and adapt and like think of new things. But it's like they're very like interconnected to one another, so it's super special.
And I think that's the beauty right now, you know, working with the data and with the human interaction. That's where the beautiful art comes, because at the ICA, that was still Film My Metaverse, right? But it was just like a live performance that you did. Is that correct?
So we streamed Film My Metaverse, but it at the end of Film My Metaverse, it kind of seamlessly went into Feels 360, and that was like a interactive 360 live stream performance. So it was the debut of Offworld's plugin, where their plugin, basically you can press emojis. Their plugin isn't just this, but this is what we did. But you go on Instagram on an interactive 360 live stream, and you press the emojis, and because the live stream is projected into the physical space where the dancers are performing, the audience can change the environment live. So they press the emojis, and the emojis start to fill up, and you can see them projected on the screen. And then once they filled up, changes happen in the virtual environment. So it's all happening in real time. So it's almost like it's really
interesting. Carry on, sorry.
Like if nobody participates, there will be no changes in that environment, but also you could be pressing those emojis and you could be affecting that space. So it's almost like you're doing a really small action, and that's actually affecting like a physical space with a big audience.
Well, I think basically there you were before your time then, because obviously look at COVID now and the fact that people need interaction but they can't gather together. It's quite it's a really interesting thing for you to have tested and also to be able to build on now, because I was going to say, like, how has COVID affected your work? You know, you work in digital art. Like, what has happened from COVID?
So we kind of had to do a lot of like restructuring, just like on a very on a very like practical level of like, we have opportunities that's supposed to be physical, and now we have to think of alternatives, or it's postponed and stuff like that. And we kind of like I think the thing is with our practice is we love the physical and the digital, and the digital can come first or the physical can come first, but they're interconnected and we can really adapt to it. So like one of the things we did was we created this website called ourmetaverse.live, and you can watch the film at the moment even because of it not being exhibited in galleries. And then we also presented different pieces of work that were done in a more of like a digital assets way, almost like a gamified inventory. Nice. And we created a collective space where people can contribute to ideas, and we wrote about different little things and gave resources. And then we did a learning program with FACT, and we created an AR filter and a video each week, and we talked to like younger kids about this and developed this AR program all through Instagram. And
that's great.
so Yeah, so we just carve a space virtually, basically, for ourselves. Like, there are no boundaries, it's just the new parameters.
Well, this is it. And because you've carved your space out already online, I think that becomes a lot easier. And I wanted to say to you, like, how has the virtual, social media, like, affected your art?
So like both Tanya and I grew up in Cornwall, and then we went to uni at Falmouth, so it was in Cornwall, and Izzy's from Oxford, and like when we were at finished uni, we didn't know anyone from London, and really what we did, we went to London and we just worked really hard on our social media so that we could have a voice. And I don't know, I grew up in the, like, 5 miles away from Land's End in the middle of nowhere, so you know, social media really was one of my ways of being able to leave Cornwall and talk to different people, find new people.
Where are you going?
Yeah, so it's just like, you know, and also my mum's like an artist and she did everything herself, and you know, my mum's also Japanese, so like when I was little, you know, from the age of 7, I helped my mum do everything. I packed all her prints, I took my brother to school, I cooked, I did everything.
There was no holds bars, basically. Working child, love it, a good
yeah, so you just kind of like, you know, what my mum was really good at is that she's good at doing things. And I think from like learning about this kind of entrepreneurship of how you take action, like I think all of us do that within the collaboration. We all take on this approach of like, just like whatever we want to imagine, we'll imagine, which creates a really great space, because it means that you kind of, because you have the support of other people, you kind of have the confidence to try things because you know you'll have that support. But I think you feel more intimidated on your own. But also it means that you make a lot of mistakes and you don't know the traditional way of doing things, which can also mean sometimes you're going in circles a bit.
But is there a traditional way things in art now, especially like with all the technology that you have? You know, do you study fine art at uni, right? Oh, sorry about that. Fine art, right? So if you study fine art, and then like your mum obviously is an artist, and then now you basically ended up doing digital, I just think there's just no holds bars again, you know what I mean? And like making these mistakes is actually pretty great. It creates what you're creating now, basically.
Yeah, I kind of just feel like people aren't very good at making decisions. So I think learning, like we do learn from mistakes primarily. Like we don't learn from our mistakes. We learn from our mistakes 10 times over, and then something gets in there a little bit. So
I got to ask you about mistakes now. You've got it on my mind. What is the like biggest mistake that you've made but seems to have had the best reward? That's a hard question.
Yeah, I know mistakes that don't have rewards.
You can tell me the one that hasn't got.
I think
let's try that.
When you work collaboratively, you need to make sure the people that you're working with, like, it's really important that they know themselves to the point that they are willing to give up their individuation. So I think what happens is even if you're the kindest person in the world, if you are insecure about yourself and you don't know who you are, you don't know your artistic practice, and it's not that your artistic practice is always evolving, but if you don't know it to the point where you aren't actually in a place where you can give your practice to someone else and have a fluid exchange, it causes a lot of stress and uncomfortability and affects everyone within the group and the ecosystem. So you really need to work with people who are at that in that space where they can give something to contribute, that they can do it in an open source way, but then, you know, it's a mutual exchange. And, you know, it's fine if like, well, it's very positive if people can take something away. Like, you know, our practice is very like, we don't take that much ownership over what we do. Like, you know, for a really long time we didn't even say like that person does this or does that, but the only reason why we do it was either we work with collaborators who have worked within the industry and want to be recognized more officially, or to not confuse other people. But before, we wanted no hierarchical or like no labeling. So like when you meet somebody, you instantly say like, oh, so what's your job, what do you do? And you go, oh, I'm an artist, or I'm a musician, I'm a producer, whatever. And I think it instantly creates barriers. But also over time we found like the impracticality of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a difficult one, because I don't know, for me, like I actually didn't step into my artistry for quite some time. Actually, I was always like, oh, you know, I make music, but nah, I'm an artist. And like that, what that does, it encompasses so many different things, and I actually like not being so boxed in, you know. Hi everyone who's just joined. We are talking about the future of music, and I enjoy we've had a for Keiken. Please ask your questions, by the way. We're here to answer questions, we're here to talk anything that you'd like, and we're also here to use a lot of face filters and my head to cover nipples when they come up, because we've got the fabulous Feel My Metaverse playing in the background, so please enjoy the ride. But you know, you're right. Collaboration is such a key thing for anything to move forward. But you are so correct about, like, you need to be really set in your position, basically, and just know how far that you want to stretch. You know, but the best thing about collaboration, I've got to say. So I'm just like working on a digital space at the moment. It is all based in Unreal Engine, you know, to actually do my performances and stuff like that. And I would not be able to do that without collaborating with the people I'm collaborating with, you know, like Her Visions have been helping me out no end to help me find a team that can actually build these things, you know. And I have to say, I literally started at zero with technology. I just was really interested in how I can merge the world of reality and the hyper reality and create these spaces that I can just get my audience to enjoy. And it changes, you know, because like you guys, I don't want to live in a static space, you know. Sense.
Yeah, of course. Well, Unreal's also really incredible. I just think there should, like, you want things to be boundless, and you want the distance between the screen and yourself to not be so separate. I think, like, you want to feel the heart of someone else through a screen, so it's hard to be like this away from somebody. I think it's not, you know, humans are tactile beings. Not all humans, but you know, most humans are tactile beings, and I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done with technology to create it in like a more natural way of existing, like coexisting with technology and humans.
When you say that, then, because like talking about COVID, like I think COVID needed to happen for a lot of technologies to start working with humans better. Like if we look at VR, for instance, you know, we'd say that VR is your way to kind of completely escape from your reality. And right now, VR seems like pretty great. You know, I've just got my mum's VR headset. Well, you know, it's just great, especially if they're in the house and stuff because of the likes of COVID. So, you know, what do you think about VR and how?
So I think, you know, VR as a tool, it could be used as a emancipatory tool. It could be used for negative purposes. You know, VR has developed to be much more. It's like a better stage that it's easy to put on. Like I have an Oculus, and the Oculus is, you know, there's no wires to it. You know, I think that VR still has a long way in terms of its comfortableness. There's something very like awkward about VR. Like it totally hurts my eyes when I wear it still. Like I can't stay in it for very long.
Motion sickness as well is quite a big thing.
I get motion sickness as well, actually. Always the girls, when I put on VR, they always tickle me, and it's so annoying.
It's quite weird. think they're like, okay, yeah.
But I think VR is incredible. But yeah, answering your question, I think VR is incredible, and I think the technology will be amazing if it can get to that level. Like, I know there's a lot of like scientific, like engineering problem solving, I think, to do with, I can't remember, I know AR, there's a problem solving with like basically if you want it in your, like, say like near your retina, it's like there's something that doesn't there's like some sort of material that you can't make it, you can only make it to a certain smallness.
Okay.
So it kind of means that AR can only go some way till it like has like, they know where the stopping point is and that they need to problem solve to be able to make it more of a like not just on your phones kind of thing, something a bit more like integrated in a believable way. But I also think technology, it's like who is creating those technologies, like what are the aims of those technologies. Even if it's a practical technology, there's still you know, it's really the intent of things really does change the way the technology evolves, because people think about things so differently. Like I just think there's like a lot of different things, but overall, like I definitely well, I want to be part of the conversation. Like, I want to be part of the conversation influencing those technologies, because I think they need multiple voices.
I think you're completely right. And the thing with that as well, so the influences of from different voices, especially if we just look at the likes of like machine learning and AI, like I believe it's like 75% of people who are programming that are white men, right? So if there's that programming going into the future of like what everything that we do, it's really important that there is more equality in the voices who actually start programming these things, or the people who decide how we can use these things for future, because ultimately we're just going to end up with the same kind of disparity and the inequality that we've got today, just ingrained into the fabrics of our future, you know?
Yeah, and it will be ingrained under the skin, so it will biologically change you. And I think that's what's really scary, is the way there'll be biological developments that either like for surveillance or immortality or things like that I think are like changes the shape of society, the very integral fundamental roots of society. They could create inequality on like a different like bio level that's just really like in more than just insidious. It's like unbelievably like grotesque and like completely like, you know, inequality is like, the thing is like over like through capitalism the world has become richer as an overall thing. There are less people in poverty than there ever has been. However, the distance, there is more money than ever, so the disparity between money is so much greater. And like if you look at the statistics of how many billionaires there are and stuff like that, the amount that they earn is so much progressively more each year. So I think like I just think the world is like in a very like chaotic and unequal space that's doesn't have this like deeper sense of compassion like that is good to other human beings from like a diverse level. Like I think you know, I was saying to you earlier when we were just having a conversation, and you know, the earth is diverse. Think of the sea, think of all the creatures, think of the insects, think of the birds. That is, the earth has thought through the perspective of diversity. Technology is not thought through the perspective of diversity. And when you think of diversity, you really need to think on that level of the way the earth was created. The earth thought on a diverse perspective. We don't think on a diverse perspective.
No, I really like that analogy, especially linking it to the earth, because the amount of organisms and stuff that we have there, it just shows that that's what we are. We are all very different. And as soon as, you know, technologies and the modern day technologies stop getting these biases in it, yeah, that's going to be a bit of a problem. How how do you become part of the conversation then? I'll vote for you.
Yeah, vote for me. Well, there's like different things that I think you can do. So one of the things we did was like, for example, we were in the beta stages of the Facebook Spark AR, so making these filters. So we have lots of conversations with actually Facebook. We've like been to see them a few times. So there's like, we can tell them when we think something's not right and flag it up. So there are like, you know, even like big corporations like Facebook, I know they're only one small sector, but we still, but it's an immersive sector that is very popular within Facebook. So, you know, it's super interesting. Like, I think there are ways of doing it. Like, I definitely think, I think it's quite hard for, I think it's quite hard for people who don't exist within the typical sphere of types of people who would be in those spaces. So either you have an educated background, you have money that can be in that space, or you are like maybe a white male who, I'm not every white male obviously at all, like I'm not saying that, but I think that really decides those things. But I think if you aren't one of those people, you have to understand those people like lie till anything. They just say whatever shit comes out of their mouth. So I think just like fake it till you make it. Lie.
You know what, right? I'm gonna go.
Like, just live it. It's fine. Like, just do what you need to do.
You didn't even see an executive. What do you mean? Like,
yeah,
this is what I'm this is what I'm interested in. Like, when technology and art become this thing that is like wearable. You know, because right now, what we're doing, we're looking at screens and we're like feeling it for our phones. Like, what is next? You know, can we just take it off and just kind of transform ourselves a little bit? I don't know, like wear a little bit of a film or something that just gives us an outer layer. You know, like an actual real-time face filter, like in real life.
Yeah. But I think real-time things are just going to be progressively more, it's going to happen more. And if you think about Gen Z really experience their lives in real time. Like the way that they consume data, it's very much based on this real-time movement. So I think they will, like real-time technology will be absolutely like essential for the way they understand and communicate. And I think, you know, I think Gen Z actually show a lot of hope in humanity, because it's a lot of like systemic structures are being dismantled as the generations go through. And the way they react to situations are very different to the way even we react to situations. They innately grow up with a load of information. So
this
it's
is
different.
it. So, and I'm just loving the speed how things are changing at the moment as well. And it is literally down to the access of information. You know, if you were able to be a bank and look through all of the like previous artists and stuff that have come, and then be like, oh, well, I fancy picking this as well and merging it. And this is when we get just like incredible art like you do and some other people as well. And I just think it's a really interesting time. And we have to look at, you know, the utopic side of having the internet. And obviously there is the dystopic side as well. Like you were saying about Spark AR filters, that you don't own them, which is a little bit mad.
Yes, you don't own them. Like, officially Facebook owns everything that you post on it. But that's also to do with your posts. Like your posts, they also own them. So, but I guess they're only like real. Like, for example, if you're working with a client or something like that, you know, you can still pay for it. You don't have to give the Facebook a fee or anything like that. It's just more that, like, if they make updates or changes within the technology or rules, that changes the way in which you use that technology, and they shape the way it's being transformed through the rules and the things that they enable, or their like deeper ambition of what they want to create or what they want to occupy. So it's incredibly like dangerous if they're not listening to you or different people. I think it takes like an immense amount of critical analysis, an immense amount of like multiple perspectives. And also the thing with accelerationism is obviously it means that we do a lot of different things, but you really need to think with perspective. You need to engage in a conscientious way. And I think like capitalism does not enable that innately. It enables maybe a lot of money or a lot of resources and speed of things changing so that the new things happen, so there's more variables, but also it kind of is also counterintuitive, and it also isn't sustainable. So like COVID-19 is a perfect example. It's like all these big tech companies like Uber or Deliveroo, you think that they are very sustainable, like they're doing so well, but they're not doing so well. They're so fragile in their very nature because they're under false structures. They're accelerating faster than they can run, so innately it's like a unsustainable system.
100%. And isn't it like Uber? They're still in the red. They haven't made a profit. Like, these companies are getting backed up as they're supposed to be, like, future proofing. And you have to, you know, the future of art to me is very much about like how we start using our data, and other people have our data at the moment. And like, you guys are a perfect example. You know, you take data and you create these beautiful things. But these kind of future proofed companies that started in the digital age have a load of data, could do whatever they want with it. I'm interested in taking the power back and being a little bit more punky with it, and just kind of how that data looks, the data representation.
With data is another form of intelligence. Data allows us, like, it's super important to understand things in numbers. Like, numbers allow us to see the world a different way. It's a different language. So they're kind of restricting this language from us. And they're also not, it's insidious. They're not telling you why they're taking this data. They're just taking it and you don't understand it. You accept it as well. And I think they're actually taking away our own privilege of becoming more intelligent beings. But I also think with data that one thing artists can help and enable is to create data that is more visual, more engaging, more interactive, ways of of talking about data and surveillance capitalism and how you take back the ownership of data. I think artists play a big part in that conversation and shaping that for people. But I think also maybe the younger generation could really adapt to understanding their data on a very intuitive level of just that's not so intimidating. Like data can also be it can feel very cold, and it can also, like, people don't like the truth. People want to live between reality and not reality at the same time. Like, we live through fiction and non-fiction. We don't live through purely factual information. So it's also a delicate balance of real data and fictional spaces. So I guess artists can also contribute to that, and other scientists, the collaboration of between that. But definitely, like, we need to gain ownership over both our fictional narrative and also our more factual narrative that exists through space and time.
We're talking about that then, because, you know, I would really like to start using facial recognition data. And unfortunately, you know, like facial recognition cameras are not set up. They're quite racially biased, unfortunately. Like you're 35% likely to get a misread of your face, like your mistaken identity if you're a black woman, which is really weird, you know, compared to, I think it's like 7% if you're a white woman or something. It's really just weird how these like unconscious bias are like all conscious put into these machines. And I'm just interested to start using that data and then start revisualizing it in a different way, because ultimately that could be quite dystopic, you know, thinking, right, well, I'm more likely to get convicted of something that I haven't done. But how do you like subvert that and then just start creating this physical space which uses the data, but it kind of makes it informative but beautiful? Because I feel like there's just so much crap happening at the moment that like back to power. Like this is why I really like what you do, because, you know, you tell a story, a really quite dark story, but then you're always bringing it back to this like fantasy or like you know, cinematic, like it just takes me back to, it's quite nostalgic basically for me, you know what I mean? Because I'm able to get lost in the story and then understand the purpose, and I really like that basically.
Okay, so
Really?
it's a basic question. Let's just see like how to unpack it. So obviously I don't know like exactly like there's like so with biases, obviously that is another example of like white privilege, and that we live under a white structure that doesn't enable that is not facilitated for diverse beings and different people. And it just, you know, it seems like a very basic and obvious thing to be able to track both white people, Asian people, black people. It's like pretty like, you know, pretty basic shit. But I think in terms of like creating technology that can do that, I think it's just by more artists having the facilities and the right teams to be able to enable that, because you need to work with scientists, developers, engineers, etc. And you also need to it's like, yeah, it's very complicated, and you need to come up with these ideas. And I think when you come up with these ideas, the problem with attempting to make ideas from those technologies is the artist doesn't understand the technology, and also obviously it's not affordable. But because they don't understand the technology, they can't really create something from it, because they need to have some parameters or boundaries. And I think often what happens is that there's a developer or something that speaks in a very different way with a different intention, and the artist comes along and they just don't understand the parameters of that technology. So it's very hard to create something when there's no ground to stand on. And I think to create new technologies is really the best way to create stuff like that, or to create a fictional experience that explores the politics of that situation or the environment of that situation. But like an example is like one of the projects we wanted to explore that I think we're not going to explore for a while, but like in the film there's like the characters can occupy different bodies and they learn through sensory understandings. And we had this old project where people wore silicone bellies and performed, and the silicone pregnant bellies, people became very attached to them. And it was really interesting because so like people crying, people like, you know, they felt they couldn't see that they couldn't understand it as not being reality. It's like you see it, you touch it, and you know it's not real, but you still feel that it's real. You still have this emotional bond with the silicone pregnant belly, and you feel pregnant because of the weight, because of the texture of the skin. And even the most interesting thing was that even men felt it. So one of the curators we were working with, he's like, "Can I wear it for a bit?" And we were like, okay. He ran off for 2 hours wearing it.
Actually,
It's so innate, and it also talks about biology, I guess. And like I think people often feel that we are biologically, so like we're biologically male or female, and I think they often say like, oh, that's nature, or they kind of actually create a boundary through this idea of nature creating a restriction. But I think it's maybe not really existing. Maybe that's
no, it kind of doesn't. And the fact that the men and the women felt it too, it's just quite, that's really, really interesting. The thing is, you take it to, because you always have that kind of like feels of it as well, and like that sounds like it would just be next. I'd be freaked out. I'm sorry, I can't.
Yeah, you should try it. Have a go.
But then I'm bored. So why don't you just send over a silicone belly and I'll let you know. I'm like, that was interesting.
But with the silicone belly, shall I explain? Or so with the silicone belly, what you could do is you could put haptic technology so that you wore a VR and you looked down and you were a creature, but you were a pregnant creature. But when you went to touch the belly, it would you would get a haptic feeling, and through haptics you can create feeling through not physically feeling something. So you can go like this, and you will feel the energy, so you'll feel a vibration. So it's like another level of like, you're never really touching anything, but then even when you touch the fake belly, you feel like you're pregnant, but you're in a body that's not your body. So it's like
Whoa.
a complete mind trip. I think it's something that we really want to develop, but it takes a lot of like actual scientific research to be able to develop
Yeah.
it. And also we've not really entered haptics, so it's like another area. But I think it's like a project that will stay under the carpet till, I think, with COVID-19, there's different technologies that require different variables because of the current situation we're in.
Mm. And you see, them kind of projects are perfect to get funding for as well, because it sounds like it's just expensive getting all these teams and materials to create it. But the outcome
Yeah.
is definitely beneficial to society. Like, that sounds
Mm-hmm,
amazing.
mm-hmm.
You know what
Yeah,
I
but you
had
could record that data. So that's an example
Yeah.
of like you could record people's data of being in that digital space with a pregnant belly, and then you could feed that into a world that you're creating in an engine. So that's a good way of like that's a like really specific type of data that you're getting that's very much to do with the mother and child, and to do
Mm.
with like, it's very from an artist perspective, and it's from a very xenofeminist perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So it like
I
really
like it.
like, yeah, so it's like, I think there's a whole new way of like understanding data and collecting data that is just so integrated with with immersive technologies, with ownership over data through
Mm.
multiple different ways of understanding, that I think can be very multi-layered.
That's really, really great point, and a really good example as well. Viewers, would you want to wear one of these haptic silicone baby suits? Please, we want to know.
And that's a question. There was a
I
question.
answered it like, can you give me an example of how my data is used? I think.
Yeah, how my data's used.
Yeah.
So like
Maybe it's in terms of the one that you've just said, or generally.
yeah, and even just like, I think that a lot of, just like recording your habits, like it probably knows more about yourself than you do about yourself. It reveals so many things. Like, I bet you Googled a lot of weird things. I think everyone does occasionally or all the time. So
Yeah.
yeah. And just like weird habits, like for example, I remember one time I was at I was on a airplane one time,
Mm-hmm.
and this guy was like, he was so annoying, he was really posh, and he was pissing me off. And it was so weird because he had like this like very typical Instagram feed where it was all hot women like half naked, but he was really into their faces. So you could see when he was scrolling down, he would zoom into the faces, not into the body, even though they were almost half naked. And it just like gives like a really weird insight to the psychology of somebody just through that example. Or another example is like, I've seen someone do that, but on their photos, and they go through all the photos with them inside it, but then they say like it's a group of people and they're inside the group photo, they always just zoom into their face, but like say they always zoom into their nose, and they do that. You just watch them do it like 100 times over with all these different photos. It like reveals the human nature, and it reveals psychology of people. It reveals societal like problems, like the amount of data that you can get about the unconscious self is like, and the conscious self is like undeniably like a huge amount of resources. Like they have like, they have so much data. Like for example, the reason why Uber can, even though they're still in debt, they have now so much data. Yeah, exactly. So they still have data. So that's so they can always occupy or sell that data.
So do you remember Offo bikes?
Offo bikes.
Yeah, they were yellow, right? And basically they were all around the city, they were all around the country. And Offo bikes was, I believe it was a Japanese company. And they'd put bikes all across this country, and you had to download an app to get onto the bike. And then when they had enough data, they just left all the bikes and they left. And now people are riding around with old Offo bikes because you don't need the bike. They just wanted the data. And how mad is that? You know what I mean? They know a lot of information now about people who've been downloading them for their bikes. And yeah, they just disappeared. So
that's so weird. Yeah.
good example. We're in the final 5 minutes now before Instagram decides to chuck us off. And I wanted, I wanted to speak to you about like the future, basically, because we've covered so much about it now. But what kind of technology excites you the most about the future that you're kind of interested in working in? And I'm going to get a face filter on for this bit now.
So what technology excites me the most?
Yeah.
I guess, like immersive technologies of all kinds. I think it's really not about the material itself as much. Like the material could be any material. But oh no. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, you're on. Oh yeah, it says dystopia. That's so cool. It says the dystopia.
Yeah. Heads as well.
That is good, girl.
Hey.
But yeah, I really think it's not necessarily about the technology itself. It's like it's always about the concept and the idea and what technology could facilitate that, and whether that it doesn't really matter about whether that technology exists or not. It's about coming up with the idea and then thinking about how you could create that. Oh, actually, gaming engines as well. Like I love gaming engines. Just like using gaming engines. Like I love Unreal because they have a very like they have quite an open source way of working where people can come in and they have like 5 million or something like that. Like Facebook doesn't like that. Ooh, it's the last minute.
It's stopping it. Oh, it doesn't like it. Right. I'm going to let her finish.
I think the filters don't seem to
I'm going back.
do well for your...
No! We're back. So, I'm not going to try that again. So, you're talking about open source. If you think about like Minecraft, that's how that was built, and it was built by its players and everything. Like it's such an interesting concept, and it's so nice that that's coming into art now. I think gaming is definitely the place to all look at.
Definitely, like so many games you can mod, and people get jobs from modding, and they start to build the new technologies. Like there is just like gaming softwares, games have to work in an open source way as well often, because they need to like lend each other's use each other's engines and stuff like that, because it's such a complicated thing to create. It takes so many years to create. So I think creating these alternate worlds, but I guess coming from a perspective that's less one type of person would be nice. Like I think games are it's not like, for example, Paul Kojima, who recently did the Death Stranding but also did Metal Gear Solid and stuff. Like when he did the first Metal Gear Solid, he did some amazing things. Like he was such an innovator. He did very like artistic abstract things, like you get to a point where it says like you've got to look at the disc. So people would go around the whole game trying to find this disc that they thought was in the digital world, and then they realized that the answer was on the disc. So they had to open it up and it was in the disc. And there was like another one where it was like you had to like something like take the plug out or something like that, and basically you had to plug your controller. There's like 2 sockets to plug your controller, and you had to plug your controller into the other socket for the next bit of the game to work.
See, I like that. I really like that. It's like it's basically coming out of the screen. Do you know what I mean? And making the game.
Yeah, it's making you physically do an action. Yeah, it's super interesting. But like I think there's not to work on artists work both conceptually and like it's also lots of like moral obligations, but moral obligations that aren't they're not corporate morals, because corporate morals are like they kind of ruin the human out of things.
So we're at our last minute now, so I think that's probably a good place to end, because we could talk about this forever. And I know, and I'm going to be messaging you after, like, what else?
Thank you for having me.
So, no, thank you so much for coming on. And I'm sorry, everybody, it was a bit buggy at the beginning. My phone does not seem to be able to handle face filters. I need to sort that out because I really want to use the face filters.
You're naked without them.
I was like, checked it on there and on here.